Welcome back to Chaos Corner. It's your old buddy, the Guardian of Chaos, Big Daddy, and I tell it like it is. I'll say that to say this. Coming to you live to tape, 25 feet below the surface of the earth. This is part 5 of Chaos Corner. You know what we're covering. You know what we're into. We're going to swing it around to both sides because this is what we're covering here live to tape on a Monday. Burt Randolph Sugar, Captain Lou Albano, The Complete Idiot's Guide to Pro Wrestling. We're on Chapter 11, Rowdy Rivalries of Revenge, the Founding Fathers Wrestling Colorful History. That's what we're covering here. Let me lower the distraction. Follow me on all social media platforms. On Twitter, it's at Big Daddy G.O.C. And the G.O.C. stands for the Guardian of Chaos. Hit that profile link. That will knock you over to here, Guardian of Chaos on YouTube. And of course, Jay Brony on Twitter is at Mario_Chaos. And then my two personas on Facebook, Jay Brony and Prodigio Fidelis El Guardian. Also on Instagram, at the Guardian of Chaos. We're available on all podcast forms, video, audio, and otherwise. You're not going to want to miss it. We just got finished covering some unbelievable feuds and what's going on in the history of pro wrestling. Remember the time frame. We go flashback, throwback, way back to the future. This was written and released in 1999. We've been covering it here on Chaos Corner on the over 80 different podcasts and the hundreds of videos here on the channel. Remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell. Let's spread the word. We're going into some of the biggest feuds that you're ever going to follow in pro wrestling. Remember the time. This is the golden era. We're here in 2021. We just had an unbelievable Thanksgiving weekend, and we're headed into Christmas and the birth of Christ. A big greetings and shout out to all my fans and followers. Don't go anywhere. Grab a cup of coffee, a cup of tea. Sit back and relax to part 5 of Rowdy Rivalries of Revenge. All right, fans, we covered a lot of different rivalries so far. We're here on part 5. We'll try to keep them short. We just got finished with Ric Flair versus Harley Race. We're going to tune into another feud, Hulk Hogan versus the Iron Sheik. Through wrestling's long, colorful history, American rings have been besieged by hordes of foreign invaders, a veritable rogues gallery that would do justice to central casting. Mr. Moto, El Mongo, Kendo Nagasaki, Baron von Raschke, and hundreds of others sought to rival their fellows in villainy. But none of these villainous characters could hold a candle to the Iron Sheik, wrestling's version of the Exorcist who scared the living hell out of his opponents with his camel clutch. Now, you know that the Iron Sheik and I were on Amazing Tales for Jerry Springer. Go back and check that out on the table. Sheiky was, we had one hell of a time out there in Chicago with the Iron Sheik. Just a little sidebar I like to throw in there here on Chaos Corner. Alive to tape. Wrestling in the name of the hated Ayatollah, the Sheik invaded America's wrestling rings to prove that Americans are weaklings and to show what pieces of garbage American wrestlers are. Those are his words, you know, USA, you get it. He culminated his campaign against America by beating Bob Backlund on December 26, 1983, to become the 9th champion in WWF history. Backlund, who had entered the ring that night with an injury, demanded a rematch. But when he was hurt in a subsequent bout, his tag team partner, Hulk Hogan, took his place to prevent the Iron Sheik from taking the belt back to Iran. Announcing that he would take the Sheik on, Hogan said it would be a great crime if the Sheik took the belt out of the United States. It's got to stay right here in the good old USA. And even though the Sheik and his manager, Classy Freddie Blassie, protested, saying they had trained for Backlund, not the Hulkster, they agreed to a one-match, one-time before the Sheik returned to his native Iran forever. And so in January of 1984, in front of a jam-packed house of New York's Madison Square Garden, the two went at it to settle more than a territorial war. They fought for national pride as well. The crowd greeted Hogan with a rousing exhibition of Hulkamania, while the Sheik responded true to character by jumping atop the turnbuckle and giving the audience an Iranian salute a la the middle finger. Without waiting for the opening bell, Hogan tore out of his corner and began pummeling the Sheik. No preliminaries, no Treaty of Geneva, thank you. Just a good old-fashioned ass-kicking American style. For a brief second, it appeared that the Sheik's reign would be a short one, as Hogan rained blow after blow on the Iranian's shaven head. But just as Hogan was about to apply the coup de grace, by charging into the cornered Sheik, his opponent moved quickly out of the way, and Hogan, unable to alter his charge, slammed headlong into the ring post. He fell to the canvas like a stricken King Kong falling from the Empire State Building. As Captain Lou's corner would say, Captain Lou Albano, unlike the usual case where wrestlers use made-up bios with all sorts of outrageous claims, the Iron Sheik really was an Iranian and legit as they come. The Sheik, seeing his moment, seized it. He went to work on the inert body of the Hulk, stepping over Hulk with his pointy yellow shoes to apply the dreaded camel clutch. An eerie silence fell over the crowd at the Garden, as Hogan, his face contorted in pain, tried mightily to resist the Sheik's submission hold, all to no avail. What seemed like an eternity ticked away. 10 ticks of the second hand of the big Madison Square Garden clock. Then 20, 30, 40. The Sheik continued to exert his pressure on Hogan. Finally, after an excruciating 52 seconds, Hogan managed to maneuver his arms underneath the Sheik's massive body. By degrees, he began to lift himself and his tormentor up off the canvas. With an incredible show of brute strength, his red, white, and blue corpuscles straining to the task, Hogan managed to stand erect, the Sheik still clinging to his back. Slowly he turned, and Hogan now backed the Sheik into a corner. Finally, with one giant burst of energy, Hogan rammed the Sheik's back onto the turnbuckle, and the Iranian fell to the mat with a thud. As the dazed Sheik unsteadily made it to the legs, there were no strangers to him now. He was met by a Hulk Hogan elbow, a.k.a. Axe Bomber. The Hulkster leaped high into the air and crashed his leg into the Sheik's upper torso a la the leg drop. The Sheik fell to the canvas as if poleaxe, there to be covered by Hogan for a 1, 2, 3 count. As the referee intoned 3, the more than 22,000 fans at the Garden erupted with a bellowing hailing their hero and the new WWF champion. Hulk Hogan had turned the tables on the Sheik and saved the belt from forever going back to Iran. Now that right there is Rowdy Rivalries of Revenge and the beginning of it all, of WrestleMania. The war to settle the score, the war to settle it all, the brawl to settle it all, MTV, Cyndi Lauper, Captain Lou, Mr. T, Piper, Hogan. It really was unbelievable. We go on to the next phase here. We'll make it a two-parter. Like we did on part 4, we will here on part 5 as well. We have some other feuds that I definitely want to cover. There's The Undertaker versus Kane. There's Ricky Steamboat versus Ric Flair. There's Eddie and Chavo Guerrero. There's, I guess, we have a few others in here. I don't know if they're worth covering, but we'll go on to another one that I found very entertaining. Since we were just talking about Hogan in '84 and the Sheik and MTV, Jerry Lawler versus Andy Kaufman here on Chaos Corner, coming to you live to tape from 25 feet below the surface of the earth. And I'll say that to say this because I tell it like it is. This is a two-parter here on part 5 of the Founding Fathers, Wrestling's Colorful History, Rowdy Rivalries of Revenge. He was better known as Latka Gravis on the TV sitcom Taxi, But in the early 1980s, Kaufman became known to wrestling fans at the Memphis Mid-South Coliseum as the World Intergender Wrestling Champion. Say that, World Intergender Wrestling Champion. This was written well over 20 years ago, and you see how now intergender is so mainstream, whether it be in the independent pro wrestling circuit or even in the bigger organizations. So again, Kaufman at the Mid-South Coliseum here in the 80s, World Intergender Wrestling Champion, a title as made up as the championship belt he fashioned for himself. Who knew we'd be there in 2021? Right between Thanksgiving and Christmas here on Chaos Corner. But unlike his gibberish spouting taxi character or his dead-on impersonations of Elvis, this was no act. And the only laughter it generated was nervous laughter, especially among Kaufman's friends. Kaufman was serious about his wrestling persona and even made a videotape in which he came off a la his boyhood idol, Buddy Nature Boy Rogers, as a baddie, a heel. He challenged all women to pin him for $1,000 and even offered to marry the woman who could beat him. Kaufman sent his tape to several promoters, but only one took interest. Eddie Marlin of the Memphis Mid-South Coliseum. It was a decision that brought fans out to the arena in record numbers. It's all on YouTube, fans. You can go back and check it out. It's all documented. They all wanted to see Kaufman get beaten, but in the first 4 matches, no one came close to succeeding. Then came Foxy, an oversized lady who outweighed Kaufman by at least 100 pounds. As the bell rang for their match, Kaufman was strutting around the ring in his thermal underwear, boasting about his earlier victories that evening. Foxy came roaring out of her corner and was all over the self-proclaimed intercontinental intergendered champion. Finally, after she had thrown him to the canvas and nearly pinned him, Kaufman prevailed. But the bout had been close enough to warrant a rematch. This time around, Foxy had help. Enter Jerry the King Lawler, who coached her. Still, Kaufman managed to win and added insult to injury by rubbing her face into the mat. The fans went wild and screamed for Lawler to enter the ring and help Foxy. When Lawler complied, Kaufman jumped off Foxy screaming, "Lawler, don't you touch me. I'm from Hollywood. I'll sue you for everything you've got." No one ever knew if this was all an act, but it was enough to ignite a feud with Lawler, fueled by Kaufman's media appearances, taunting the King and mocking the Memphis fans. Lawler responded by threatening Kaufman, who he now called the Wimp, and warning, "I'm going to end your fantasy." Andy Kaufman said, "You're going to get hurt." The verbal gauntlet having been thrown, Kaufman picked it up and accepted the challenge to wrestle, but he never let anybody know and never let anyone in on the deal. He never met with Lawler beforehand to discuss the course the bout should take. As Lawler put it, I never could understand why. He would agree to that if he didn't think there would be some kind of meeting, something mutually agreed upon where he wouldn't get hurt. Instead, Kaufman just showed up, and Lawler was left with no option but to really wrestle. I can't just let a 150-pound comedian come in and have a match with the Southern Heavyweight Champion and walk around unscathed. People would have thought we were a joke, as already it was tough enough to believe. On April 5th, 1982, the two faced each other in the ring. Kaufman began by ducking out of the ring every time Lawler got near enough to touch him, prompting Lawler to commandeer the ring microphone and mock him. Finally, Lawler let Kaufman near enough to try a headlock, but turned into a surprise move and delivered a pile driver, however you want to see it, to Kaufman into the mat, not once, but twice. After the second one, Kaufman was unconscious. The comedian was taken by ambulance to the local hospital, where he spent the next 3 days in traction. But that wasn't the end of it, fans, as you well know. The media took after Lawler for his barbarity, and Kaufman spent his time obsessing about the match. 3 months later, the two met again on the infamous Letterman show, and Kaufman broke into a stream of obscenities. The King swatted the comedian out of his chair, and Kaufman responded by flinging Letterman's coffee into Lawler's face. The brouhaha sparked a deluge of calls from outraged viewers, outraged by Kaufman, that is. The whole deal made headlines across the country. The two continued the rivalry in arenas across the country with plots, plans, and double crosses galore, but the confrontations between wrestling and comedy would forever blur the line between reality and pretense. And we can move on with what happened after that, and even bring in David Arquette at times, and different people from celebrity that have crossed over into the world of professional wrestling, the mainstream swaps of whether it be football players, basketball players, UFC, entertainment, musicians. They all want to be involved, and you know that. So I just want to say that I'm having a great time covering this here, the rivalries of pro wrestling and where they dated back. And again, I'm not including anything within the last 2 decades. Remember when this book was written. Again, the rowdy rivalries of revenge, the founding fathers, wrestling's colorful history. This was part 5. We were able to get 2 in 1. Unbelievable. Hogan and Sheik, when it all started with rock and wrestling in the early 80s and 84 and specifically. And then, of course, with Kaufman and Letterman, it really has been something. So thanks for tuning in here. This is part 5 of what we're covering here on Chaos Corner. Live to tape. Don't go anywhere, because I'll be right back. I'll say that to say this. What does that mean? Don't you dare miss it, right? You're still here? Where's this? How do I turn this off? This is behind the scenes? No, I don't know.